What a tasty little morsel we have here. Come now, did your parents never teach you not to wander around at night? You never know what could be lurking in the shadows. And you never know who could be in the mood for a delicious midnight snack. Boo. It's a pleasure to see you again, dear traveler. I was only testing your reaction times. A small bit of training never hurts, and you are wandering around rather lackadaisically. I'm aware I was the one who invited you here tonight, but it's always best to maintain a high level of vigilance. As I said before, you never know what could be lurking in the shadows, and you never know when even I could become a danger myself. You say you're not scared, but there was once a time when you would have believed me. Don't you forget that. It does not surprise me in the least to hear you say that. I'm glad to see you. And you're just in time for a little rendezvous on this lovely evening. Did you have anywhere you wanted to go in particular? Of course I invited you for a late-night walk. I don't have any reason not to, after all. I am well aware we're likely going to spend a great deal of time together in the coming weeks, but I think the both of us would enjoy spending a night out without any distractions. You'll have to forgive my selfishness, but I'd rather keep you to myself, at least for tonight. I don't object to the rest of our present company, but I did miss having some more personal time with my elusive traveler. It has been so dreadfully long since we were able to have a meaningful conversation, just the two of us. And I do have another reason to be out and about at this time. If there's anything the reconnaissance company has taught me, it's that you need to scout out a new area as quickly as possible. I can't say I'm terribly familiar with Sumeru's topography, much less that of this domain we'll be staying in. Lack of knowledge in navigating an area could easily spell disaster in the wrong situation, so I figured I ought to remedy that as soon as possible. What better solution than to take a quick survey of the area? And who better to act as my guide than you? By taking this midnight walk together, we can not only catch up, but also share valuable information. And if we happen to pass by an interesting location, we can take some time to enjoy the scenery. I would think we have plenty of reason to go on this outing tonight. And I look forward to spending some time with my dear traveler, alone. So, shall we proceed? Good. I knew you'd understand my reasoning. I recall there's a location west of the courtyard that has excellent visibility of the domain. We can make our way there first. It has been a while, hasn't it? I'm willing to guess we've both been busy, as usual. I don't recall a single moment when you were content not to do anything. It feels like every time we meet, you have another collection of stories about your recent travels, ready to regale any audience about what you've been doing in the past few weeks. And you have an eager audience right here. Don't let me do all the talking now. Believe me, traveler, I always enjoy hearing about your recent adventures. Very well. Then if you'd rather not talk about that, how has this domain treated you so far? Yes, how have you enjoyed your adventures in Bottleland? It was quite the unexpected vacation, but a welcome one nonetheless. From the looks of things, our companions feel the same way. Was what necessary? Well, you know I have to maintain a certain image, especially around the other knights. Of course I had to send you a coded message. Even when you think you're alone, you never know who could be listening in. Besides, I was positive you'd understand my signal. You always did have an impeccable memory. And speaking of memory, I suddenly recalled it's been a while since your last dance lesson. Can I trust that you've been practicing? Are you quite sure about that? Dance is useful not only as exercise, but also as a form of expression and communication. You can say much more with a dance than with a speech. If I were to continue giving you lessons, will you be sure to practice? What's on your mind, traveler? I didn't get to my current position by stumbling around and guessing what people are thinking. You're preoccupied with something. Me? I seem different? Really now? Well, I would hope that I seem different. Remaining stagnant is one of the few things I would dislike the most. Imagine if the characters in your favorite stories never changed. If they acted the exact same at the ending of the story as they did at the beginning. That would be incredibly dull, wouldn't you think? So, in what ways do you think I've changed? Certainly they're mostly good changes, I would hope. You think I'm more laid back? Really now? In what way? Very well, if that's how I seem. My goals are still as true as the day I met you. But it's not unusual that I've relaxed somewhat from your perspective. It's hard not to relax around someone like you. And it helps that I can place my trust in you. And I afford that privilege to very few individuals, so very few people have seen my letting my guard down, just a bit. I will say, you're not the first one to have remarked on that. Several of my colleagues in the Knights have mentioned it as well, even some of my subordinates. They said they were surprised that I seem so much more easygoing. Though I'm not sure if they meant it in a mocking way. You don't think they did? Well, I certainly hope they don't think I've let my combat skills relax in the same way. Or with the way some of them approach me now. Even the individuals that wouldn't dare stay in the same room as me a few months ago are talking to me now. And yet, a few of the other knights are still just as wary as the day they first saw me. In fact, I think some of them are even more nervous around me than before. Why in the world would they be even more alert now? They don't know what to expect? Well, isn't that remarkable? Whether I behave how I was raised, or try adjusting to fit their behavior, they still think I could lash out at any moment. Oh, I'm still going to act as I normally do. After all, if my actions won't affect their preconceived notions of my character, then why care about changing how I act around them? Traveler, up here. Watch your step. We can stop here. Look. Now that it's nighttime, the lights from the pavilion stand out much more, don't you think? I must say, the atmosphere in this domain is particularly relaxing. Yes, I like it. Compared to the desert, the air here certainly feels much more pleasant, that's for sure. It's neither dry nor muggy, and there's a refreshing breeze. I feel energized just taking in the sights. Entertaining? Yes. I understand why you would say the domain is entertaining. Personally, I prefer observing instead of partaking in the games and rides. However, I do understand why one would enjoy the attractions. I can't say I'm too familiar with what you can find there, but you and our companion seem to have had a great time so far. In which case, I do appreciate that you find the Mirage entertaining. No, I'm not familiar in the slightest. They're nothing like the festival as I've seen when I was younger. Growing up as nobility, my family were very particular with what events we ought to partake in. My parents most certainly would have dismissed these attractions as rambunctious games for the peasantry. You're right, that does sound pretentious, doesn't it? It's a good thing I don't share their preferences, then. It's not only the atmosphere I enjoy. There aren't many words I can use to describe the Mirage other than lively. It feels like the ideal place for a summer vacation. Honestly, the entire domain is very impressive. I've seen my fair share of domains, but never anything on this scale. And to think that a person was able to create this world, perhaps even constructing the domain with all the ease of building a tower of blocks. When you view it in that light, it's difficult not to feel some awe. I'm not entirely surprised, to tell you the truth. After hearing of what Alice was able to accomplish before, it's no wonder her acquaintances are capable of similar acts. Alice? No, I've yet to meet her in person, and from the stories I've heard about her, she seems incredibly elusive, even to people that are much closer to her than I. But, based on what I know, this Alice is nothing short of impressive. From what I remember of the past few years, she's arranged several summertime vacations for Klee, each time finding some far-flung location and converting it into a festive retreat for her daughter to enjoy. Klee enjoys telling the other night stories of her most recent escapades. Although children are prone to exaggeration, and Klee's no exception, it's clear she enjoyed herself greatly. And hearing the way she talks about her mother, it's easy to tell she adores her parents. She's a very precocious child, and all the other knights clearly dote on her. As odd as the knights can be sometimes, they helped ensure she grew up in a very supportive environment. No, it was very different for me. My parents certainly enjoyed telling me about how grateful I ought to be for what they've provided me. I received an education, lessons in etiquette, and what they claimed to be a supremely easy childhood. And yet, Klee is much happier than I was as a child. Alice certainly has different priorities for her parenting. That's a sudden question. Me? A parent? No, I don't mind talking about it, and I've already made up my mind a long time ago. Simply put, I'm not planning to have any children of my own, and I don't consider it much of a loss. You're certainly less intrusive than many of my relatives. More than a few of them constantly tell me about how I need to find a suitor and produce an heir before it's too late. Some of my relatives already consider me an old hag. But to answer simply, I have priorities over having children. I suppose I'll have to explain my own thoughts on the matter. Too often are children treated as an extension of their parents' lives. When one has children, it's all too often with the goal of creating an easily controllable life that they can use to vicariously accomplish the goals they never could attain when they were younger. Yes, the Lawrence clan is a prime example of that. But even outside my family, parents can be incredibly selfish. And even the most well-intentioned parents can pass their burdens to their children, without even realizing they've done so. I firmly believe that anyone, including children, ought to be able to live freely, without the burdens of the generations before them. And it's exactly for that reason why I'm not planning to have children anytime soon. I'd much rather achieve all my goals myself, without relying on any future generation to continue my ambitions for me. And I'd rather not continue the legacy of the Lawrence clan. At least, not in its current state. And if I did accomplish everything, if that somehow were to happen during my life, well, I wouldn't have the history of my family name to worry about anymore, now would I? Would I consider having children? And that's always a decision I can make after I finish what needs to be done. My dear traveler, we both have many years ahead of us, and there's no need to make haste just yet. Some decisions can wait, and I think we have our own priorities right now. There are questions that are better answered in the future, and there are questions that are better answered now. For example, what's your favorite attraction in this domain? But if I were to gain a sudden interest in exploring more of the Mirage, I wanted to know if you had any recommendations. The rail cars. They do look very thrilling, don't they? I may not be very familiar with these attractions, but there's always time to experience them. Wouldn't you think so? Traveler, if I may ask, would you happen to know if those hydro droplets we met are still active at night? And just to confirm that I remember correctly, they are what power each part of their domain, including the rail cars, correct? I've already invited you for this walk tonight, but if you'd like to keep the night going for a while longer, would we be able to take a short trip on the rail cars right now? I've given it some thought, and I think it's about time I learn more about this domain. No better time than the present, wouldn't you think? And furthermore, we've seen how the mirage looks at night, but I couldn't help but wonder what the scenery would look like from another viewpoint. Judging by what we've seen already, I think it would be well worth the time. How about it then? Don't you think it's a good time for a late night thrill? I think it'll be fun. Yes, fun. Would you like to join me? Excellent.